I'm the teacher of this course. My name is David Neiman. I'm Dr. Professor David Neiman. A little background, very little. I taught for many years at the Catholic universities, at Boston College for 25 years, and at the Pontifical Gregorian University in Rome, where I taught for 1 year. And last semester I taught at St. John's Seminary in Camarillo, and this semester I'm teaching at Loyola Marymount. But I'm also teaching at the University of Judaism, and I have taught at Jewish universities also. Obviously, my background is Jewish history and Jewish religion, and I've read extensively in Christian history, so I'm able to offer this course on the church and the Jews through the centuries. Now, there are certain elements in the relationship between Jews and Christians which were affected by other factors than religious conviction or religious understanding and belief. One of these factors is, from the very beginning, the national hostility. Now, you know, when we read Greek and Roman writers before the Christian era, writers such as Manetho the Egyptian, he was an Egyptian, a Greco-Egyptian of the 3rd century BC. Manetho is very hostile to the Jews. He is not a Christian. This is 250 years before the rise of Christianity, before the birth of Jesus. When we read and hear about Apion, a Greek also from the city of Alexandria, he was a Greek, he lived in Egypt, but he didn't consider himself an Egyptian. But Apion of the 1st century, he lived around the year 40 or 50 of the Christian era. Apion was a Greek pagan, violently anti-Jewish. And then we find in the writings of Tacitus, the Roman historian, hostile attitudes or hostile expressions about the Jewish people. And in Suetonius, and Suetonius wrote a very fascinating book, the Lives of the 12 Caesars, really an interesting book that all of you should read because it's very exciting and fascinating. Now, Suetonius, who lived around the year 100 or thereabouts, when he observed the Jews and the Christians, he didn't see a difference between them because at that time in Rome, a Roman couldn't quite understand what this argument is all about. All he knew is if Jews and Christians are fighting and arguing and they're mentioned using the same vocabulary and both of them talking about the Messiah and both of them talking about the end of days, he didn't know the difference between them. So he assumed that this Christ they were talking about was the ringleader or the rabble-rouser who was making the Jews go into riots. He didn't quite know the difference, and many Romans couldn't. But it's interesting that even Suetonius has a kind of supercilious attitude towards the Jews and looks down upon them. So there is a nationalistic element. That is, Greeks and Romans and Egyptians and Syrians and some Phoenicians, many people were anti-Jewish because nations don't always agree. I mean, you have wonderful examples contemporary with our own time where people speak the same language and are ready to kill each other for reasons understood and perhaps not understood. But evidently, the Jews were a target of contempt by pagans. One of the reasons, and they say this, they actually express this, they can't understand this people. They have a temple, they worship a god, and there's no statue, there's no picture, there's no physical representation, not even symbolic of the object of their worship and adoration. So the fact that the Jews worshipped in what the pagans considered to be a very mysterious way was something that not only aroused their curiosity, but the whole concept of something's wrong with them. They don't quite understand how religion should be observed. And then we have another factor, and this works many times throughout the history of Europe, and that is what the Marxists would call the class struggle, where Jews, for various reasons and because of their condition, usually managed to establish themselves with a sense of security, economic security, and the solid relationship of families and Jewish groups within any community. And in the course of time, always from the beginning of history until the present day, there is always a large proportion of a population which is poverty-stricken. And many times there are people who simply can't see their way to rise from their low economic status. And this at times leads to rebellions and to revolutions, and this has happened throughout history. And many times, especially since the rise of Christianity, the social revolution was diverted and directed against the Jews. They were a visible target, as we'll see. Yes?
Following up on the lady's question.
Yes.
Were there equal suspicions toward Mithraists and ISIS cults and other
No.
specialized cults
No.
as they would have viewed Jews?
We don't know, and I don't believe so. You see, there is another factor. We'll get to that. And first of all, Mithra, the Mithra cult and the Persian religions did become popular in the Roman Empire. The Egyptian cults of Isis and Osiris also became popular to a certain extent in the Roman Empire. But you see, they are connected to their homelands. The Isis and Osiris religion is rooted in the Nile Valley. That's Egyptian, and Egypt was a land where the Egyptians lived. The Mithra cult is from Persia, and the Persians were in Persia, with the land where they lived. The Jews are different. The Jews in the Christian history are a diaspora nation, a very widespread diaspora nation, and this is another factor which is most important.